Hello everybody, my name is Ryan and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, thank you so much for joining me today. Today we're going to be talking about some of my favorite books and me trying to get you to read them. I saw Jack Edwards do this. I love his channel. I love his taste in literature. I love him. So I saw him do a video where he basically read a quote from some of his favorite books to try and convince you, us, to read the books based off of the quote that he read and chose. So I wanted to do that today. I picked 5 books, technically 6, because one is a duology and I took a quote from each book. Honestly, it's not a shock if you can see. Just saying. Anyway, in each of the books, I have selected 2 quotes. In the case of the duology, I picked one from both books. And I'm going to just read them to you today because I think they're so beautiful and give you a little bit of a synopsis about the book. And hopefully maybe you'll find some recommendations and something that you want to pick up from this stack that maybe you hadn't heard of before. Now, something to know about me as a reader, as a media consumer, the things that I love are things that destroy me, okay? I like sad books. I like sad movies. I like sad songs. I like sad everything. If I am like sobbing and snotting, we've done good, okay? And we're having a good time. Even if we maybe are not having an actual good time, reading wise, we're having a good time. That's a good sign. Don't mind my empty bookshelf back here. I just got new bookshelves and I'm currently in the middle of organizing my shelves, my room, that kind of deal. So some of them are a little bit empty right now, but we'll be getting to that, you know, in another video. Here comes my dog. What is it gonna make? Neville, no. No. Hi, handsome boy. Good boy, there you go. You gonna come say hello? Are you coming to say hello? Hi. Hi. Thank you so much. Thanks, Nev. Alright, where are you going now? You going somewhere else? Okay. Well, if you're gonna join the video, then can you sit down? Okay, goodbye. Love you. See you later. You wanna come sit here? Come here. Good boy. Can you sit? Sit. Oh, that's the spot you chose? Right there. Right there. I love you so much. Nev? Good boy. Okay, that works. That works. Good boy. Okay. Sorry if you hear my dog, because he's laying directly in front of the camera and his head might pop up at some point under here, but I love him. I love you, Neville. Okay. Anyway, I think I was saying that, oh, some of these quotes will have sensitive topics in them. I am aware of this. So I am saving those 2 books as the last 2 books. And I believe it's only 1 quote technically from each of those books that contains like kind of sensitive material. So I will be giving trigger warnings before I read those quotes. So don't worry, I will get to that and I'll cover it before. That way you can either skip the quote or click off if it's something that you're not comfortable with, or something that will, you know, affect you. So with that being said, I think it's time to get into the first book. So the first pick I have is, I think, maybe my favorite book of last year, of 2022, that I read. And that is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. Now, this is kind of an interesting one because all of the reviews and things I see about this book, I feel like people either really love this book or really don't like this book at all. which is understandable. I can absolutely see how that would work. So basically we follow Kathy, who at the beginning of the book is a 30-year-old woman, and we know that she is a carer, okay? But we don't know like what exactly that means, just that she's been a carer for 11 years now. And she's helping people who are called donors. Again, we don't know anything about what this means. We are not given any context other than carer and donor. And recently, coming into the place that she works as a carer are Ruth and Tommy, who are her childhood best friends. Went to school with them, grew up with them, childhood best friends. So we begin to recount the details of their childhood at Hailsham, which was the school that they all attended. And we start to put some puzzle pieces together on what exactly is going on and what it means to be a carer, what it means to be a donor, all that kind of stuff. So I loved this book. It took me a little bit longer to read than maybe some other books would have, but it wasn't because I wasn't picking it up. I feel like it just needed to really sink in, which is why it took me a little bit longer. But the first quote that I'm going to read to you happens on page 5, okay? So we are learning a little bit about how Ruth came to be where Kathy is working, and how certain carers sometimes get to choose what kind of donors they are going to take care of, meaning they get to choose the person that they are going to care for. So she's talking about how this was before she got to that point where she was able to choose her donors. And the quote is, the passage. These are all passages, not quotes. So I guess I should make that clear. The passage is as follows. There have been times over the years when I've tried to leave Hailsham behind, when I've told myself I shouldn't look back so much. But then there came a point when I just stopped resisting. It had to do with this particular donor I had once, in my 3rd year as a carer. It was his reaction when I mentioned I was from Hailsham. He'd just come through his 3rd donation. It hadn't gone well, and he must have known he wasn't going to make it. He could hardly breathe, but he looked towards me and said, "Hailsham, I bet that was a beautiful place." Then, the next morning, when I was making conversation to keep his mind off it all, and I asked where he'd grown up, he mentioned some place in Dorset, and his face beneath the blotches went into a completely new kind of grimace, and I realized then how desperately he didn't want reminding. Instead, he wanted to hear about Hailsham. So over the next 5 or 6 days, I told him whatever he wanted to know, and he'd lie there, all hooked up, a gentle smile breaking through. He'd ask me about the big things and the little things, about our guardians, about how we each had our own collection chests under our beds, the football, the rounders, the little path that took you all around the outside of the main house, around all its nooks and crannies, the duck pond, the food, the view from the art room over the fields on a foggy morning. Sometimes he'd make me say things over and over, things I told him only the day before. He'd ask about like I'd never told him. Did you have a sports pavilion? Which guardian was your special favorite? At first, I thought this was just the drugs, but then I realized his mind was clear enough. What he wanted was not just to hear about Hailsham, but to remember Hailsham, just like it had been his own childhood. He knew he was close to completing, and so that's what he was doing, getting me to describe things to him, so they'd really sink in, so that maybe during those sleepless nights, with the drugs and the pain and the exhaustion, the line would blur between what were my memories and what were his. That was when I first understood, really understood, just how lucky we'd been. Tommy, Ruth, me, all the rest of us. If that doesn't pull you in and get you to want to know what is going on in this world, what are these people going through, and also learning about Ruth, Tommy, Kathy's past at their school, I don't know what will. Come on now. Hits you right in the gut. Hits you right in the gut. Okay? The next passage is much shorter, and it is on page 197, so it's kind of towards the end of the book, and it follows Kathy recounting a little bit of a fight that she had with Ruth. And just honestly talking about friendship and how easily breakable that can sometimes be. So, the passage is, as I've said, it wasn't until a long time afterwards, long after I'd left the cottages, that I realized just how significant our little encounter in the churchyard had been. I was upset at the time, yes, but I didn't believe it to be anything so different from other tiffs we'd had. It never occurred to me that our lives, until then, so closely interwoven, could unravel and separate over a thing like that. But the fact was, I suppose, there were powerful tides tugging us apart by then, and it only needed something like that to finish the task. If we'd understood that back then, who knows, maybe we'd have kept a tighter hold of one another. Man, oh man, gets me every time. As somebody who has gone through quite a few friendship breakups, man, oh man, did that hit me. And just learning about the friendships and how they came to be and what they ended up being in this book. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Tell me that you're not intrigued. I'll wait. We'll put that back there. There we go. Okay. So the next book then is Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. I know. I'm sure you've heard about this one. I'm sure you have. But listen, it's worth it. You should read it. It is a coming-of-age story following Toru. And he basically is in college. It's ups and downs with love. And his first love, the separation between him and his first love due to the loss of their friend, and maybe a new love in the future. Maybe. I don't know. I guess we'll have to find out. Now, both of the passages that I have picked in this book are right at the front, because when you get too far back, things start to spoil? Why did that take me so long to get there? I don't really know. But the first passage is literally on page 4. The first passage in Norwegian Wood that we are going to discuss is Toru talking about memory and recalling certain scenes in his past and what he was thinking about and remembering in the moment, and what he is thinking about and able to remember now, looking back on it however many years, 15, 18 years down the road, and what exactly was important to him that stuck with him and he's able to pay attention to now that all of this time has passed versus what he was paying attention to in the moment. Memory is a funny thing. When I was in the scene, I hardly paid it any mind. I never stopped to think of it as something that would make a lasting impression. Certainly I never imagined that 18 years later, I would recall it in such detail. I didn't give a damn about the scenery that day. I was thinking about myself. I was thinking about the beautiful girl walking next to me. I was thinking about the two of us together, and then about myself again. It was the age, that time of life, when every sight, every feeling, every thought came back, like a boomerang to me. And worse, I was in love. Love with complications. Scenery was the last thing on my mind. Now, though, that meadow scene is the first thing that comes back to me. The smell of the grass, the faint chill of the wind, the line of the hills, the barking of a dog. These are the first things, and they come with absolute clarity. I feel as if I can reach out and trace them with a fingertip. And yet, as clear as the scene may be, no one is in it. No one. Naoko is not there, and neither am I. Where could we have disappeared to? How could such a thing have happened? Everything that seemed so important back then, Naoko and the self I was then, and the world I had then, where could they have all gone? It's true, I can't even bring back Naoko's face. Not right away, at least. All I'm left holding is a background, sheer scenery with no people up front. Now, if that doesn't hit you, all I gotta say is that's exactly how I feel when I try and recall anything. Anything. So then, the next quote that I'm going to read you, or passage, is then on page 10. So we're in the same chapter and just recalling a little bit of a conversation between Naoko and Toru. And she's basically asking him to promise her that he will never forget her. Oh my god. The wind is going crazy. Naoko is asking Toru to promise that he'll never forget her. That's all she wants. She's like, you need to always remember me. Promise me that you will always remember me. Don't ever forget me no matter what happens down the line. Always, always, always remember me. Which kind of also calls back into question the entire first passage that I read to you on memory. So, this is right after, or he's reflecting on the conversation where she was making him promise to always remember her. Once, long ago, when I was still young, when the memories were far more vivid than they are now, I often tried to write about Naoko, but I was never able to produce a line. I knew that if that first line would come, the rest would pour itself onto the page, but I could never make it happen. Everything was too sharp and clear, so that I could never tell where to start. The way a map that shows too much can sometimes be useless. Now, though, I realize that all I can place in the imperfect vessel of writing are imperfect memories and imperfect thoughts. The more the memories of Naoko inside me fade, the more deeply I am able to understand her. I know, too, why she asked me not to forget her. Naoko herself knew, of course. She knew that my memories of her would fade, which is precisely why she begged me never to forget her, to remember that she had existed. The thought fills me with an almost unbearable sorrow, because Naoko never loved me. Are you joking? Pick it up right now. Do it. Do it. Holy smokes. Are you guys hearing this shit? Anyway, pick this up. Be aware, there are some explicit scenes in this. All in all, though, beautiful. Absolutely stunning. Good job, Murakami. Slay King. Okay. Up next, we're going to do the duology, and yeah, you guessed it. You guessed what the duology was going to be. We all guessed it. Come on now. Come on now. Get it together. Get it together. Okay? Everybody kind of knows about this, I think, anyway. So, the first quote that I'm going to read to you, or passage, although these are probably the shortest ones that I've picked, were in these two books, just because there's not huge, long, droning on descriptions in these, right? Do I need to talk about what these are about? Do I need to? Basically, a group of 6 outcasts, and they're going on a heist. I think that's all you need to know. But yeah, whatever. You know what? We don't need to talk about it. Anyway, so there is an ice court heist happening in Six of Crows, if you didn't know. And we have Kaz, Inej, Jesper, Wylan, Nina, and Matthias are our 6 outcasts, right? So, on the way out of the ice court, at the end of the heist, we are in Kaz's point of view in this moment. Kaz being the head of the Crows. And he is talking about how he's hoping that Inej made it out, because they are not together in this situation. They had different jobs, yes? So they're not together in this situation, and he's hoping that Inej gets out. Now, something to know about Kaz is that Kaz does not let anyone in, and that is the understatement of the century, ladies and gents. Understatement of the century. Anyway, he's thinking about this. And so, the passage is, he tried to think of his brother, of revenge, of Pekka Rollins tied to a chair in the house on Zelverstraat. Trade orders stuffed down his throat as Kaz forced him to remember Geordie's name. But all he could think of was Inej. She had to live. She had to have made it out of the ice court, and if she hadn't, then he had to live to rescue her. The ache in his lungs was unbearable. He needed to tell her. What? That she was lovely and brave and better than anything he deserved. That he was twisted, crooked, wrong, but not so broken that he couldn't pull himself together into some semblance of a man for her. That without meaning to, he'd begun to lean on her, to look for her, to need her near. He needed to thank her for his new hat. Guys. I think we all need a moment after that one. Wow. Just pure gold, right? Pure gold. Pure gold. So that is Six of Crows. The thing to know about Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom is that it's absolutely non-stop, you know, action. These are very much fantasy, you know, plot and character driven story. But it's moving, okay? This is not something that's going to be a long, drawn out, like, love affair, okay? That's not what you're getting here. You're not getting that here. You are in the sense of very, very slow burn. Very slow burn. That is amazing. But we're moving, okay? We're rapidly moving. And so that brings us to Crooked Kingdom. Now, one thing to know about me, at my core, I said it in my first reaction video to Shadow and Bone season 2, just to let every single person in this world know, as you saw my shirt, I am nothing if not a Wylan apologist. So Wesper is my shit, okay? It's my shit. With that being said, the passage that I'm going to read from Crooked Kingdom is my favorite of all time because it is Jesper recounting seeing Wylan in the tannery for the very first time and his thoughts in that moment, and it killed me. Now, this is something that we won't probably get in the show if we get a renewal, because in the show they're together, they met under different circumstances. We know, okay? It's different. So in this, you might not get this unless you read the book, or if you're watching this right now. That's all I gotta say about that. So, BRB while I freak out. Okay, this passage is one of my favorites. He felt greedy for something. He'd wanted to kiss Wylan since he'd first seen him stirring chemicals in that gruesome tannery. Ruddy curls, damp with the heat, skin so delicate it looked like it would bruise if you breathed on it too hard. He looked like he'd fallen into the wrong story. A prince turned pauper. From then on, Jesper had been stuck somewhere between the desire to taunt the pampered little merchling into another blush and the urge to flirt him into a quiet corner just to see what might happen. But sometime during their hours at the ice court, that curiosity had changed. He'd felt the tug of something more, something that came to life in Wylan's unexpected courage, in his wide-eyed, generous way of looking at the world. It made Jesper feel like a kite on a tether, lifted up and then plummeting down. And he liked it. I'm so sorry, don't look at me. That's so good. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? Are you kidding? Read it. This is one of my favorite books of all time. Six of Crows is great. Six of Crows is a 10 out of 10, okay? This book, masterpiece. Masterpiece. Masterpiece, masterpiece, masterpiece. This book is the one. It's the one. It's the one. It's the one. You need to get to it. You need to read it yesterday, okay? That's Crooked Kingdom. Okay, so now is the last two, and this is where we are going to get into the tougher topics. One passage each that talks about a sensitive topic. So the first book is Beartown by Frederick Backman. Okay, Frederick Backman is one of my favorite authors. I've read 3 books of his now. I've read Beartown, Anxious People, and A Man Called Uwe. And This one I think is my favorite, then Anxious People, and then A Man Called Uva. But all fabulous. All of them made me cry, which, as we've previously established, that's my thing. That's my jam. But if you don't know what Beartown is about, it basically follows this tiny town community whose thing is their ice hockey team, okay? And we get so many points of view throughout this book because something terrible happens in this town to a girl, and it kind of throws everything off for this town's future plans and how people are interacting with each other and everything like that, okay? So for the first passage in this book, trigger warnings for SA, if you do not want to hear this. Now, it's not going to explicitly, it's not, none of these are going to be like explicit, but it's alluding to and talking about the aftermath of this after coming forward from a situation like this, and just the absolute mistreatment of women who face this, and why more people don't come forward, I guess, is the best way to say that. But yes, so I'm going to read this passage now. If you would like to skip this, I'm going to put a timestamp to when I'm done this one, so you can skip forward to that if you do not want to hear this passage. Again, it's not going into detail about that. It's the aftermath of the questions and things like that that she would be asked by police, by others, that kind of thing, okay? So the passage is, words are small things. No one means any harm by them. They keep saying that. Everyone is just doing their job. The police say it all the time. I'm just doing my job here. That's why no one asks what the boy did. As soon as the girl starts to talk, they interrupt her instead with questions about what she did. Did she go up the stairs ahead of him or behind him? Did she lie down on the bed voluntarily, or was she forced? Did she unbutton her own blouse? Did she kiss him? No. Did she kiss him back then? Had she been drinking alcohol? Had she smoked marijuana? Did she say no? Was she clear about that? Did she scream loudly enough? Did she struggle hard enough? Why didn't she take photographs of her bruises right away? Why did she run from the party instead of saying anything to the other guests? They have to gather all the information, they say, when they ask the same question 10 times in different ways in order to see if she changes her answer. This is a serious allegation, they remind her, as if it's the allegation that's the problem. She is told all the things she shouldn't have done. She shouldn't have waited so long before going to the police. She shouldn't have gotten rid of the clothes she was wearing. Shouldn't have showered. Shouldn't have drunk alcohol. Shouldn't have put herself in that situation. Shouldn't have gone into the room, up the stairs, given him the impression. If only she hadn't existed, then none of this would have happened. Why didn't she think of that? She's 15, above the age of consent, and he's 17, but he's still the boy in every conversation. She's the young woman. Words are not small things. When I tell you this book and this man's writing is off the charts, this is one of my favorite authors of all time, and I feel like I can actually say that now because I've read 3 books, given them all 5 stars, credited all of them. I have all of his books. I just am trying to take my time because I don't want to read them all and then have nothing new to read. I could reread them, but you know what? We're not going to get into that right now. But I just felt like that was such a good, quick way of saying, like, this is what happens and this is so messed up. Like, just very black and white. And it really makes you, like, angry when you're reading it. Like, why is this happening? Why are we not believing her? Is she being scolded, all in all, right? Like, why is she the one who's getting in trouble for this situation? And just, it brings up all of that as a discussion, and how that just, you know, goes about this small community and how it affects everything. Guys, it's amazing, this book. Okay, and then the next one that I'm going to read is kind of off the coattails of that. This does not necessarily talk about that in that sense. This is, you know, talking about emotions and just conflict in general between parties, okay? So this quote or passage, I don't know why I keep saying quote, but it's a passage, is, "Hate can be a deeply stimulating emotion. The world becomes much easier to understand and much less terrifying if you divide everything and everyone into friends and enemies, we and they, good and evil. The easiest way to unite a group isn't through love, because love is hard, it makes demands. Hate is simple. So, the first thing that happens in a conflict is that we choose a side, because that's easier than trying to hold two thoughts in our heads at the same time. The second thing that happens is that we seek out facts that confirm what we want to believe. Comforting facts, ones that permit life to go on as normal. The third is that we dehumanize our enemy. There are many ways of doing that, but none is easier than taking her name away from her." What? Are you joking? That's so good. That is so good. Guys, it is so good. Of course, look up trigger warnings and things of that nature before going into this, because there are portions of the story that do get more explicit about things and, you know, all of that nature. But just the writing that this man can do and the way that he can tell a story and bring about such complex characters and make you fall so in love with them and see things from all these different sides, from all of these different characters and their thoughts and feelings and emotions and beliefs, and just like, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. Please, you will not be disappointed if you read anything by this man, but especially Beartown. Beartown is the one. Beartown is the shit, okay? And on to the last one. I don't think, this one is on here. I do not necessarily recommend this book. So I do want to make that very clear before I hold this book up, because this is a book that is not for everyone, okay? In a lot of ways, it's probably not for most people. It is one of my favorite books of all time, but I absolutely, like, you should not read this if you will not be able to handle it, if that makes sense. I've told my mother she should not read this book. I've told a lot of people that they should not read this book because it is not for everybody. As much as I love it, it is very graphic, very emotional, very traumatic, but all in all, to me, it is a beautiful, 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 stunning book about friendship, found family, and just life in general, I feel like. And of course, lots and lots and lots of not good things are happening. So again, this is going to probably have like the biggest list of trigger warnings that any book has ever had ever. But I do want to put that out there before I even hold it up and talk about it. This is not for everyone. I do not recommend this like I recommend all of these books back here. Read all these books. Do that. This book, look everything up before. Please, please, please do not just go buy this book. Okay? Okay? Okay. I think you know what book it is, but now that I got my spiel out of the way, because I feel like a lot of people really, really, really recommend this book, and I just want to be so clear that no, this is not for everybody. And I do not think everybody should read this book. Okay? Now that I got it, I think you get the point. I think you get the point. The last one we are going to talk about and read from today is, you guessed it by this point, I'm sure, A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. So, again, like I said, the first quote is just about friendship. If you don't know what this book is about, like I said, definitely about friendship, found family, that kind of thing. But we follow 4 best friends, Jude, Willem, Malcolm, and JB, okay? And they live in New York. And we follow primarily Jude, okay, who has been through a lot, the most that a person could possibly ever go through, ever. So, keep that in mind. But we follow Jude primarily, and we go through the ups and downs with him. Jude struggles with a lot. But this first passage that I am going to read is, I think, beautiful because it's talking about the struggles and just how he chooses to work through them and push through every single day. But towards the end of this passage, it does allude to self-harm, so I do want to put that out there. Not anything explicit, just a reference to items and things of that nature. So I will put the timestamp like over here for when I'm done with this passage. But I do want to make that clear. That way nobody is shocked or hurt by this passage, okay? So this passage is Jude is at his friend Andy's, and Andy looks over Jude's body. Andy is a doctor, and he kind of watches over Jude a little bit. They have check-ins where he can look things over and make sure that Jude is okay and Jude is not self-harming and things of that nature. So Andy is Jude's friend as well as his doctor. But this is at one of those check-ins when he is talking about Andy, and after Andy kind of checks him over. So it says, he had admired his leg, pivoting it and examining the place where the wound had at last closed over, as Andy talked and talked. "Are you listening to me, Jude?" he had finally demanded. "It looks good," he told Andy, not answering him but wanting his reassurance. "Doesn't it?" Andy sighed. "It looks..." And then he stopped and was quiet, and he had looked up, had watched Andy shut his eyes as if refocusing himself, and then open them again. "It looks good, Jude," he'd said quietly. "It does." He had felt then a great surge of gratitude, because he knew Andy didn't think it looked good, would never think it looked good. To Andy, his body was an onslaught of terrors, one against which the two of them had to be constantly attentive. He knew Andy thought he was self-destructive, or delusional, or in denial. But what Andy never understood about him was this: he was an optimist. Every month, every week, he chose to open his eyes to live another day in the world. He did it when he was feeling so awful that sometimes the pain seemed to transport him to another state, one in which everything, even the past that he worked so hard to forget, seemed to fade into a gray watercolor wash. He did it when his memories crowded out all other thoughts, when it took real effort, real concentration to tether himself to his current life, to keep himself from raging with despair and shame. He did it when he was so exhausted of trying, when being awake and alive demanded such energy that he had to lie in bed thinking of reasons to get up and try again, when it would be much easier to go to the bathroom and untape the plastic zipped bag containing his cotton pads and loose razors and alcohol wipes and bandages from its hiding place beneath the sink and simply surrender. Those were the very bad days. Okay? So the writing and the depth of these characters is what makes me love this book so much, is that the immense amount of internal dialogue and understanding of these characters that we get makes you connect to them so much, and which ultimately, you know, makes the book and the story hurt that much more because you love them so much and you feel like they are real people with how deep the author gets with these characters. Some people say it's too long, but I feel like it makes it pack more of an emotional punch because we get to love and see these characters so much throughout their lives, because this follows them from college days to like adulthood, a long span of time. the next passage is Jude talking to Felix. Felix is a young boy that Jude is tutoring. It's a son of a very wealthy family, and Jude tutors him. And basically, Felix is nervous about the future and making friends and, you know, being bullied and all of that kind of thing. So this is Jude speaking to Felix about friendship, which I just love. You know, Felix, he begins, I never had friends either. Not for a very long time. Not until I was much older than you. He can sense rather than see Felix become alert, can feel him listening. I wanted them too, he continues, going slowly now, because he wants to make sure his words come out right. And I always wondered if I would ever find any, and how and when. He traces his index finger across the dark walnut tabletop, up the spine of Felix's math textbook, down his cold glass of water. And then I went to college, and I met people who, for whatever reason, decided to be my friends. And they taught me everything, really. They made me and make me into someone better than I really am. You won't understand what I mean now, but someday you will. The only trick of friendship, I think, is to find people who are better than you are. Not smarter, not cooler, but kinder and more generous and more forgiving. And then to appreciate them for what they can teach you, and to try to listen to them when they tell you something about yourself, no matter how bad or good it might be, and to trust them, which is the hardest thing of all, but the best as well. Just yes. But again, look up all the trigger warnings when it comes to this book specifically. You can look up any triggers for the other books as well, but this one, like I said before, I do not recommend this like I recommend the other books that we talked about. That's why I saved it as last, so that I could really pound that home, okay? This is not for everybody. I absolutely love this book, and if you can handle it, and it's something that you are interested in, I absolutely recommend it. It is such a beautiful book, but I do not think that everybody should read this book, and I do think that it is very important that a lot of people do not read this book. So, there's that, because it can just be very, very traumatic for some people, I feel like I can confidently say. So, there's that. What do we got here? These are all the books. I don't know if you can see from there. We have Never Let Me Go, Norwegian Wood, Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, Beartown, and A Little Life. And that, people, are some of my favorite passages from some of my favorite books. And I think that you should read them, and then we can discuss them. If you have read any of these books, please let me know your thoughts. Talk to me about them. I love these books so much. And let me know if you would like to see any more of this kind of video where I do that. I'm thinking of doing some fun, like, bookish challenges with my sister, like the first line challenge. Maybe have her do the cover challenge thing where she describes a cover to me and I have to try and guess the book. We'll see how it goes, but that is all for today. Thank you so much for joining me to talk about some of my favorite books, and I will see you guys back here for the next video. Bye, guys!